I want to start with a story that probably isn't going to get much corporate media coverage, but it's a super, super important story. The U.S. Supreme Court has denied ExxonMobil, in its effort to conceal documents that would show ExxonMobil they damn well knew about the threat of climate change many, many years ago, and they hid it anyway. The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday cleared the way for the Attorney General of Massachusetts to obtain records from ExxonMobil Corporation to probe whether the oil company for decades concealed its knowledge of the role fossil fuels play in climate change. The justices declined to hear Exxon's appeal of a ruling by the top court in Massachusetts, holding that state Attorney General Maura Healey, a Democrat, had jurisdiction to seek records to probe whether the company misled consumers and investors. The High Court's actions marked the latest setback for Exxon in its efforts to halt the Massachusetts investigation and a similar one by New York's Attorney General, who in October filed a lawsuit against the company. New York's lawsuit accused Exxon of engaging in a systematic scheme to deceive investors about the impact that future climate change regulations could have on its business. Exxon has called the claims meritless. Of course they did. The Massachusetts and New York investigation were launched following 2015 news reports that Exxon's own scientists had determined that fossil fuel combustion must be reduced to mitigate the impact of climate change. Those news reports by Inside Climate News and the Los Angeles Times were based on documents from the 70s and 80s. Exxon said the documents were not inconsistent with its public positions. Because, it's like Hillary Clinton. Exxon has a public position and a private position. Jesus. Healey in 2016 issued a civil investigative demand to Exxon seeking documents to investigate whether it had violated the state's consumer protection law through its marketing and sale of fossil fuel projects. Exxon said that because it incorporated in Texas and New Jersey, Healey had no basis to seek documents to conduct a Massachusetts-based investigation. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court in April held that jurisdiction existed because of Exxon's control over advertising conducted for about 300 franchise gas stations operating under the Exxon and Mobil brand in Massachusetts. Exxon has called the Massachusetts and New York investigations politically motivated. Well, folks, this is when I say mega story, I mean mega story. The Supreme Court, which I'm tell you the truth, pretty shocked. Supreme Court told ExxonMobil, go piss off. You're not going to hide your deceit. You're not going to hide your deceit. Because forget the investors. I don't care about ExxonMobil's investors. You have been deceiving the public about the threats of climate change. ExxonMobil has been one of the biggest culprits in issuing this false debate. Well, some people say it's not really human caused. And yes, I got the links. Alex Shot. I got those links. Thank you. ExxonMobil has paid, oh my God, hundreds of millions of dollars in public relations to make it seem like, oh, climate change is a politically motivated debate. Oh, climate change, it's really a money-making scheme for, liberal elites to make money. ExxonMobil, who, Rex Tillerson, who's now being depicted by the corporate media as like a leader of the resistance because now he's anti-Trump. Rex Tillerson was the CEO there forever, and he led the charge to spin and deceive the public. And part of the reason, one of the biggest reasons, we have the catastrophic reports coming out that, if radical change doesn't happen, like not tomorrow, but today, to curb carbon emissions, to shift to renewables, to shift to clean energy, wind, solar, all of that we're facing a little over a decade of irreversible damage to the planet. You're going to have severe droughts, even more crazy hurricanes and You had 2 hurricanes in a span of 2 weeks in Puerto Rico. That's not like God being angry, if you believe there is a God. This is climate change. And the reason it's even lasted as a debate is in large part because ExxonMobil, who is one of the leading fossil fuel companies in the world, basically covered it up for profit. I mean, it's kind of the definition of environmental genocide. How many people are going to die because ExxonMobil continued this lie? So at the end of the day, I mean, there's not really much else they could do. I'm not a lawyer, but if the Supreme Court tells you to go fuck off, whoop, demonetized. I cursed. Demonetized. If the Supreme Court tells you we're not hearing your appeal and you're full of it, then, I mean, you could try again. So this is amazing news. And I think, honestly, if ExxonMobil is forced to provide its documents, if ExxonMobil is forced to provide email correspondence, campaigns it had, the thought that went into campaigns it had, trying to depict climate change as kind of not decided or not conclusive. If ExxonMobil is forced to provide information on which officials were part of this, which media outlets were they handing over this information, because the media doesn't just spin this climate change debate by itself. They have fossil fuel company executives, fossil fuel company public relations spin artists planting shit with them. Hell, CNN has the American Petroleum Institute advertising on them. I've seen Koch brother advertisements on MSNBC. The New York Times, for God's sakes, in 2018 was a co-host of an oil and money conference. An oil and money conference. This has huge implications, and I promise you, CNN ain't going to cover it. I doubt you're going to see much in the New York Times. If Robert Mueller comes out with like Russian trolls, spent $4,700 on YouTube, they're all going to cover it. But if news comes out that ExxonMobil, armed by the corporate media, by the way, to basically cover up the damning effects of global warming, carbon emissions, now fracking, many other toxic things, you think you're going to get much attention in the corporate media? And this needs to become a major litmus test in 2020. I don't tell you who to vote for, but I will not support any candidate that doesn't come out for a ban on fracking. It's non-negotiable. That is number one. No corporate PAC money. I don't want you accepting donations from corporate executives from fossil fuel companies or Wall Street or Big Pharma or Silicon Valley. Thank you, Matty Perry, $1.99. I do have a potty mouth. I do not want, they need to be ban on fracking. They need to have a plan to shift us away from oil operating vehicles. We need to shift away from that. Why is this important? Because it really, this cover-up was not just ExxonMobil. The corporate media has aided in this cover-up. The corporate media has aided in this cover by painting this as a debate and having people on that say, well, there's a lot of scientists who say it's not conclusive or it's not a closed case. And Jake Tapper has done this, and Chuck Todd has done this, and Wolf Blitzer Creek has done this. But this is important because I have a feeling that when ExxonMobil has to hand over its documents, hand over its emails, you are going to see correspondence. You are going to see coordination between ExxonMobil and many, many media elites. Mark my words. ExxonMobil could not cover this up unless there was corporate media puppets there to pass their bullshit advertising and public relations campaigns. Literally, I saw somebody on Morning Joe this morning because I like to torture myself, so I watched Morning Joe for a hot second. Literally, there was somebody on Morning Joe giving talking points about clean hydraulic fracking. Yeah, clean hydraulic fracking, this guy said it. And take a guess if Joe Scarborough pushed back on that. I am going to be following this. If I must, I might go up to Massachusetts to do interviews on this because I think it's that important. It is that important. And by the way, to remind you, if you're unfamiliar, Harvard study found that ExxonMobil misled the public on climate change. A comprehensive, peer-reviewed academic study of ExxonMobil's internal deliberations, scientific research, and public rhetoric over the decades has confirmed empirically that the oil giant misled the public about what it knew about climate change and the risks posed by fossil fuel emissions, the authors said on Tuesday. The paper confirms the findings of a 2015 investigative series by Inside Climate News, which is a great site, that was based largely on the company's internal records and also of independent work published by the Los Angeles Times. That reporting ignited investigations by state attorney generals that are still in litigation. Quote, on the question of whether ExxonMobil misled non-scientific audiences about climate change, our analysis supports the conclusion that it did, Jeffrey Sopran and Naomi Oreskes said from Harvard University. Across the board, the paper found a, quote, systematic discrepancy between what ExxonMobil's scientists, which are basically paid mercenaries, and executives discussed about climate change privately and in academic circles and what it presented to the general public. Quote, ExxonMobil contributed quietly to the science and loudly to raising doubts about it. So I gotta tell you the truth, folks. I gotta tell you the truth. And I hope you guys don't think this is a radical statement, but I'm just gonna be honest. You know, genocide is not only rounding up innocent people, putting them on a train to their deaths in a camp. You know, when you either as a corporation, an individual, a president, whatever, when you conceal life-saving information, not just that could save one life, but save whole populations, save whole countries, save different, not just one type of person, but wildlife, animals, animals that live in water, animals that live on land, animals that live in the air. When you cover that up, that is genocide. How much would, if we would have known the full scope of the climate change that was happening in the 1970s and the 1980s and the 1990s and so on, we might have acted a decade ago. We might have already prevented things like the massive hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico 2 in 2 weeks. Do you know any instance where 2 massive hurricanes hit an island in 2 weeks? Thousands of people have died. I don't buy the numbers that they're putting out. The latest numbers were 5,000, but who knows how many more are going to die from malnutrition, or old folks who are going to die because their dialysis machines don't work. The electricity that went in and out, the contaminated water that's been found in Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, by the way. The Virgin Islands gets lost in the discussion. How many people have died in droughts in Africa and other countries? Also, ExxonMobil. Also, Rex Tillerson, ExxonMobil, Energy Transfer Partners, Sunoco Logistics, Phillips 66, I could go on, Texaco. Also, they could be filthy, greedy, rich fucks. Unfettered greed. And why do we have unfettered greed? Why do we have ExxonMobil running around basically committing genocide and fooling the masses? Because ExxonMobil owns the government. Energy Transfer Partners owns our government. All of these fossil fuel companies own each presidential candidate other than Bernie. All of these energy companies basically, I mean, how many people go on TV to talk about, oh, climate change isn't a big problem, that are actually part of the fossil fuel industry?